Match number 49, one of the highlights of the IPL calendar. RCB take on CSK at the MCA Stadium in Pune with now we can say both teams still having hope of a playoff spot. CSK have just turned it around. They had the kind of win that would get a side going, even though it is a side that has struggled by and large. And if they are to win today, they come basically within a game of RCB. Whether or not that'll be enough to make the playoffs is another question, but they're not as far on the table as we might have imagined when they met earlier on in the season. That's a game which, of course, CSK did win. So in the time that they were losing more than they were winning, they still managed to beat RCB. It was perhaps their best game in the tournament. Shivam Dubey and Robin Uthappa got the runs, and then in response, Mahesh Deekshana had a big say. Ravindra Jadeja got wickets at the D.Y. Patil Stadium where it turned, and Chennai eventually won by 23. They're posting big scores. They were posting it then. They're posting in at the MCA Stadium in Pune too, where MS Dhoni's now won a toss and will bowl first, saying that doesn't make much of a difference at the MCA Stadium whether you bat first or bowl. So we will look ahead to this one on Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by IQ 9 5G. Dan Vettori knows all about this fixture. Pleasant memories from 2011 from it, or rather not very pleasant.
Chennai's a horrible game. It was always a case of you felt like we were going to win, and then you didn't win. The only one I vividly remember was RP Singh bowled a no ball. We charged on the field like we'd won it, and Chennai charged on the field as well. So there was a lot of confusion. But they're always great games, but RCB seems to be on the losing end of it more often than not.
Is there an added sentiment to this game from whatever you observed? Of course, you were a foreign player, but did this sort of rivalry develop over time and become like the CSK MI one that we tend to have?
I don't think amongst the players, but you could sense it amongst support staff, fans, management, just the crowd. I mean, the crowd, you could see the lineup, you could see the amount of CSK fans that came to Chinnaswamy. So it had a different vibe to it. And whilst it was the same for the team, you could sense that it meant a lot more to other people.
When you say support staff, that doesn't include you, that includes...
Oh, sorry, I meant it's a little bit higher than me. Management, senior management.
Yeah, just a little bit higher. Anyway, it's a very good evening also to Ian Bishop, who joins us. Bish, this is a fixture that we tend to build up. Certainly, RCB, CSK. The fact that CSK aren't dead and buried in the competition, I guess, adds a little more to tonight's contest.
It's absolutely thrilling and important and filled with expectation to look forward to this, to find out whether CSK's winning the last game is a resurgence in form. RCB have gone the other way. They've lost a few on the trot. And for me, myself, I'm starting to wonder, not question, but wonder when and how they can pick it up. So, look, two, I suppose, storied franchises, and I'm really looking forward to this one because I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an optimism around CSK now, especially the way they beat a good-looking Sunrisers Hyderabad team at the same ground just a couple of days back. They make one change from that game. We were waiting on Moeen Ali to return to full fitness. He had an ankle injury in training, and he now makes it back. So out goes Mitch Santner. That's the only change that they make. So we're still waiting on Dwayne Bravo to fully recover. In the meantime, his namesake Pretorius keeps his spot. But Moeen comes back in. I guess that only strengthens this team in spite of Moeen having a rather quiet season in general.
I think so. I mean, he's obviously a retained player. He's one of the best T20 players in world cricket. So that's going to bring a lot to the table. And particularly if Gaikwad or Conway get out, the style that Moeen plays in, he can come in and complement whoever's there. I'm slightly surprised that they bowled first after the success they had in the last game. But Dhoni's pretty good judge of reading wickets.
Yeah, I mean, retained player is no guarantee to being picked these days, as the Knight Riders have shown us. But Bish, let me get your thoughts too. Is it a surprise after how well Conway and Gaikwad batted? Maybe we could have seen MS win the toss, bat first, and this time he's decided to bowl?
Yes, and I look at the results up there as well. I think it's 6-3 to the teams that have batted first, because sometimes on some of the pitches up there, not all of them, it can get a little bit tricky chasing if there's no dew and that sort of thing. So, and given the result, you're right, absolutely right. But Moeen Ali, you talk about Moeen Ali there, I think he has to pick up his form as well. We all know what he did so well last season. He has to come back in and give the best version of himself.
You know the player well. You rate him very highly, Moeen Ali. I mean, you spend a lot of time with him, guessing at Birmingham too. It's not quite been the same season as last year, where he's such a big part of CSK winning it. Kind of player that will pick himself up, needs to be picked up if the season's a bit flat?
Well, I think he's important if CSK can actually continue on from the last win and whether they can build towards a semi-final spot. I think we underestimate sometimes all these little things that go on in the background and how they can affect the player. I think he was late arriving with visa issues, so he missed a little bit of the start. He missed the first game. I don't think he was available. Quarantine, all those sorts of things. So not to I suppose let the player off, but it does contribute, and you miss out on that little bit of building. But he's experienced enough now, and he's, as I said before, he's one of the best players in the world. He can step it up, and he could be a decisive factor in CSK actually pushing forward for the rest of the season.
The one change that hasn't been made though, Dwayne Bravo, I guess, Bish has played a much bigger part than you would have initially imagined. We saw last season they were managing his workload. Here he is now virtually leading this bowling attack again, bowling 4 overs more often than not. Could that have played a part into MS not wanting to defend again, not having perhaps, you could say, his strike or premier bowler?
I don't think so, because they played without him in the last game. So while Bravo is important, I think you take into consideration the conditions under which each game is being played. That game today, look at the pitch, see what the conditions offer you, try to make a judgment, look at the opposition, try to make a judgment. And I just want to jump back to your point about playing or not playing a retained player, playing or not playing a guy who costs a lot of money or an overseas. Personally, I don't think you should play a guy, one, because he's a retained player. I don't think you should play a guy just because he cost you a lot of money at the auction. And I certainly don't think you should play a guy only because he's an overseas player. You play the guys who are in form, because those 3 brackets that I named, and you guys know as much as I do, if a guy is out of form, he's out of form. If he's not performing, he's not performing, regardless of how much he's cost, where he comes from, or whatever. So I think you go, I'll say it again, go with inform, however much they cost. If they cost too much and they're sitting on the bench, you've made a mistake at the auction.
What a good owner Bish would make, wouldn't he? Wouldn't he be the... I imagine your owner just telling you that.
Just have a revolt on the spot from all the players. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Yeah, he's not part of that group he talks about just above him.
You cost money because of your performance, not because of your looks and because of your name. And if you're not performing, it's unfortunate you sit.
Yep. No, we're with you, Bish. We're with you. We're just trying to think of how easy it is.
I'm not with you.
Yeah, you're not with him?
No, I think there's so many dynamics in play with those sorts of things, with your experienced players, your retained players, the big money players. And there's a lot that goes on throughout a team to actually not justify auction strategy or to bow down to experienced players, but there is an expectation from senior players or highly retained players that they are given an extended run. And I understand both sides of the argument, but I think you've got to look at it at a pragmatic level. On the ground, forces that if you are that ruthless with a team, you're going to get a team that pulls back from you very quickly.
Okay, well, let's focus on some high-profile players then, shall we? RCB are going to bat first. Don't worry, we've done Virat Kohli to death, literally, right? Well, he's got some runs now. All we need is for that strike rate to perhaps go up. But we'll focus on his opening partner today in Faf du Plessis, who comes up against CSK for the first time in many, many years. In the IPL, of course, played the reverse fixture, but he sees MS Dhoni at the toss for the first time in a while. Let's look at his numbers this season. And an average of 27, strike rate of 125 isn't too bad, but there's a lot of blow hot, blow cold in Faf this year. Lots of innings where he's been dismissed for less than 9, Dan. I mean, we almost understated his importance. He was getting runs and we thought, yeah, this is a continuation of the Faf from last year. Do RCB need to expect more consistency out of him though?
Well, he's almost emblematic of all IPL openers this year. It just feels like they're all blowing hot and cold. There's not a lot of consistency. Talk about a Shubman Gill yesterday who started the tournament so well and then he fell away. Faf's the same. He's had some really good performances and then he drifts off. So I think there's 2 ways to look at it. That's the vagaries of an IPL season and sometimes they're magnified because you miss out 3 or 4 times in a row as opposed to spreading them out. But I think the second part is how well teams have bowled. And I think in a lot of ways it's been the Indian left armers that have troubled most openers throughout the season. So I think there's a lot to unpack when a person's out of form. But I think as we've talked about on numerous occasions about all these batsmen who seem to be out of form is, can they find a way to be aggressive? Can they take the game on rather than trying to get themselves in form? Because the IPL is not a time to find form.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder if you'd like to add to that, Vish. You've seen a lot of these uncapped bowlers in the last few days and since the tournament began, whether they've played a big, they've had a big impression on this tournament and resulting in this sort of odd form, patchy form for even top openers like Faf du Plessis?
For me, in general, yeah, I'll add on top of what Daniel just said. I won't take away anything from it. I just try to add to it. I think it's even further than that. I think the pitches, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have, as we've said from the start of our broadcast of this tournament, have offered more for seam bowlers than perhaps any other IPL that I could remember. That in itself is a challenge. So we're seeing some of these opening batsmen. At first, I thought it was just the young guys, but it just seems like a lot of other guys as well, finding it hard to negotiate, hitting through the line of the ball. And we're seeing the Kuldeep Sens of this world doing an excellent job. Natarajan in the power play doing an excellent job. And I think that's good for the game. It challenges top order batsmen in a different way, but I do believe Faf needs to be more consistent. I think where you can demand consistency is from an opening batsman in this format. Bit harder for those guys down in that lower middle order, those finishers, because of the high risk nature of what they do, although you got some from Kartik and from Shimron Hetman. So I think it's a multiplicity of things that is contributing to this.
Okay, interesting. Let's go to another key player for RCB, Glenn Maxwell. Seen him in great touch on some occasions, played a couple of terrific counter-attacking sort of innings. He comes up against a matchup now that's picking up popularity in the IPL. While his numbers against spin you would take, or even on a bad day, see averages over 15 last season, strike rate 154 this year, that strike rate's up, average is a bit down, but the matchup is against Ravindra Jadeja. And there seems to be quite the story building here. 6 dismissals in 9 innings at an average of 8, a strike rate of 1, 2, 3. This is perhaps right up there in the more sort of popular matchups in the tournament. It seems like it's going one way. Curiously, Jadeja may not be in great bowling form, but he can get Maxwell out.
Well, then they'll just have to bowl him then. It's as simple as that. I think the good thing for Jadeja tonight is, well, not Jadeja, Dhoni, is there won't be any confusion around when to bowl him, because when Satner's there, it's incredibly difficult to fit in 8 overs of left-arm spin. And I believe the reason he's been successful against Maxwell is because in the end, Maxwell only has one shot to that pace, and it's that reverse sweep. And so they can counter that with Fields, albeit that he'll still take it on and he'll still try to hit him for 6 or 4. But because of that angle that Jadeja has and the pace that he bowls at, Maxwell can't get down. I don't think he's comfortable sweep slogging him or sweeping to the leg side. But what he is comfortable doing is reverse sweeping him. So if he can get away, if he can prevent him from reverse sweeping, then it really limits what Maxwell can do. And you could potentially see him look to hit over cover. But apart from that, it's Jadeja's accuracy and pace that really stifles Maxwell.
I wonder if you perhaps see, if you could tell more, if you look at the line of the ball that's dismissed Glenn Maxwell. He actually picked up a beehive on this. And what the line is here, this is Maxwell's dismissals against Jadeja, very targeted to the stumps. Tells you something?
No, because every ball Jadeja bowls hits the stumps. So spinners' beehives are misleading, because every ball hits on the same length and every ball tends to hit the stumps. I think it is his pace. And you think of Maxwell potentially giving himself a little bit of room, but that's just what Jadeja does. Jadeja just attacks the stumps. Some spin, some don't. But his accuracy, pace is the reason he's been so good for so long. Okay,
let me show you another useless graphic then. This is another beehive of spin against Jadeja. So Dan can look at it and then dismiss it. There we have it. These are dots and outs to Maxwell against spin. So dot balls in that grouping and outs. I'm guessing there are boundaries somewhere else. I don't know if we picked them yet.
I want to see every ball of spin bowled, and then they'll be all in the same spot. Sorry to ruin the segment.
Nah, it's fine. It's match 49. No one cares. Yeah, let's go to Bish. Bish, Dan makes some interesting points, but we also know Glenn Maxwell to be, if I could put it just fairly, not unfairly, a player of ego, right? It's not like he's the kind of player who's going to see out Jadeja. Last game we saw him take him on. He knows this matchup. He doesn't necessarily want to change. Now, does that contribute somewhere, the personality of the player, and these matchups tend to then get even more interesting?
It has to, and it has to contribute towards it today, because Maxwell, the last thing that any player wants is for a bowler to get into your mind and they become your nemesis. And it has happened in matchups across the game as we've seen before, longer formats, McGrath to Michael Atherton, all of that sort of thing. So it's going to tell us a lot about Glenn Maxwell's strength of mind, because Jadeja did get him in that first game as well. And we saw it coming when we sat at that game. Jadeja has to come on when Maxwell comes in. Jadeja comes on and he destroys him. So I like to see how that matchup goes, because when you have a guy who is brought into your lineup to be a spin hitter, as Maxwell is, this seems very contradictory.
All right, fair enough. You're saying he's got a limited sort of short range against Jadeja's type of bowling. The player that he is, could you expect more? Could you find different ways of taking Jadeja down if you're Glenn Maxwell? Or the sort of chat you'd have with him?
Yeah, I think so. I think he can potentially look to use his feet and hit him down the ground, but that is tricky against Jadeja. I think what Maxwell does very well is hit spinners over cover. So that's probably a shot. He'll probably shimmy away, give up his stumps and try to cut and hit him that way. So, look, I mean, there are matchups for everyone that don't look great, and the reverses that Maxwell have plenty that are the reverse of that. So this is just a little point in time for him, but I think he can be the sort of guy who can reverse that pretty quickly, because he is so talented, and generally he is a very good player of spin.
I mean, I wonder if it surprises you at all, Dan, that Jadeja hasn't completed his 4 overs quite often this season, even when he was captain, and now in the last game too, ended up bowling 3. It was a comfortable win in the end for CSK against the Sunrisers. But in this sort of IPL, are you expecting a bowler like Jadeja to always bowl 4, especially with the bowling CSK have?
I think, like we talked about before, the Satner inclusions probably confused that. That Satner's come on in the power plays and early on. Seen Jadeja probably the 7th over and the 9th, but if batsmen have batted through Satner and then Jadeja, they've got a real feel for left arm spin and understanding what the pitch is going to do. I think from now we will see him bowl 4 overs more often than not, because he's the only left arm spinner, and secondly I think the wickets are going to start being more conducive to his type of bowling. I think he spun a few the other night in Pune, so I think with that clarity now around his role, he's not captain, he's not having to be a captain who underbowls himself. You either go one way, you overbowl yourself, or you underbowl yourself. Grant Elliott always told me I overbowl myself. So, so I think he'll be now that he's relieved of that, we'll see the bowler at his best.
Is Grant Elliott right?
Well, there's no one else to bowl, so that was that was the issue.
Should have bowled
him. Grant always had a sore knee.
Yeah. Okay, Bish, the Jadeja story seemed to just go away quite, rather quietly, because everything was highlighted with the return of MS as captain. He had a quiet game as well against Sunrisers the other day. On the one hand, we're thinking, right, good on Jadeja. If he wasn't feeling it, he's relieved himself of the burden of captaincy. On the other hand, now, is there a pressure now of having to perform as a player, as a batter and bowler, bowling your 4 overs regularly? Spotlight will be on Jadeja for the World Cup after this IPL too. What sort of expectations do you have from him at this rather unique stage in a player's life, where he's been given the captaincy and let it go midway?
Oh, look, he's under pressure, because from all that we've heard, he relinquished it because he wasn't performing. It was impacting his performance. Now that has gone on to MS Dhoni, Jadeja has to start delivering. And we've seen just last season where the captaincy was removed from a certain player, and the very next game he was actually left out of the squad. So history is there, and Jadeja has to now start delivering more. He dropped catches, he wasn't getting wickets, he wasn't scoring the number of runs they wanted. So although CSK tend to give you a long run, and Jadeja will get that if he's in the worst of form in that franchise, he needs to start stepping up.
All right, and it perhaps helps that it's not only a favourable matchup against Glenn Maxwell, but number of right-hand batters that RCB bring to the table. Ever since Anuj Rawat was dropped and Rajat Patidar came in, there's a plethora of right-hand batters now for Jadeja to feast on. His numbers are much better. 5 wickets this season against the right-hand batter. He's still to dismiss a left-hander out. You'd find, I guess, most slow left-arm orthodox spinners having better numbers against right-hand batters, though.
Definitely, but I don't think Jadeja never backs away from the challenge of bowling to left-handed batsmen. You see him come over the wicket and try and bowl wide and fast, or you see him come round the wicket and try and jam up the left-handed batsman. So he's one of those bowlers that just bowls. Yep. He's not match-up dependent, albeit that you see it's a little bit of a difference between left and right-handers. I think he just gets out there and enjoys the challenge.
Okay. RCB are unchanged from the last game, which is interesting. given that they've lost 3 now on the trot after being a team that looked particularly good, 5 out of 7, then suddenly they've lost 3 on the trot, and no changes made. So thankfully Dinesh Karthik, for RCB's sake, is doing fine. He didn't take the field in their last game against the Gujarat Titans, and otherwise it's pretty much the same side. So Rajat Patidar, after a fine knock, keeps his place in the team too. It's a team that's losing but not changing. Does that worry you more sometimes? I mean, Maipal Omro did come in last game, but that was an uncapped batter for batter change. Would that concern you more, that you're playing your best team and yet not winning?
Oh, there's obviously concerns, but I think they've made the right move in not making any changes, because I think that bowling attack has continued to be pretty good throughout the season. It's been their batting that's let them down, and the quality of the batting that's there, you still continue to back. And Faf, Virat, Kohli, Dinesh Karthik, Glenn Maxwell, it's not the stage of the season to drop anyone like that, and who are you going to bring in to replace them? So the bowling's going great, continue with that, so you're never going to remove any of those players, and now the expectation is that batting group can improve, and they'll be hoping it'll be a surface like we saw for CSK Sunrisers, where the ball came onto the bat, and then you can see those stroke makers at their best.
Yeah, all right, interesting. Bish, wonder what your thoughts are. Dan uses a phrase called Tewatiad now. So basically, when you come up against the Titans, if you're Tewatiad, then you don't need to worry too much. It's not like everything else is going off. But for RCB, team that was having concerns around their batting and then losing the last one on account of not defending a score as well, or being Tewatiad, are you concerned about this team?
Raunak, last time we were on, I can't remember which game I did, but you've got your history book in front of you. You asked me that question, and I said to you, I am concerned about RCB, and then they went on to lose another game. And it's more because of the batting, because I think the guys will bowl, they will bowl well. Harshal Patel will have to pick up his game with the ball. Since he's come back from that unfortunate incident, his stats are not good reading compared to the first half. Virat Kohli has got a half century. I hope he's better off for it. His pace of scoring is down. Faf is inconsistent. Maxwell will have a matchup today. So the big focus for me today, not the only focus, the big focus is whether these guys can get the type of runs that would win them a game. I am concerned.
Okay, now let's take that point itself, shall we? Because when we look at their batting, we look at Virat Kohli. Before that, let's look at the remaining fixture list. If you're an RCB fan, you're keeping a very close eye on points that you think will be, well, every game is going to be a tough one, you'd think, but you could find a Gujarat Titans team that might have secured top spot, may field a weakened team if they are indeed going the way that they are. Punjab Kings, Hyderabad, all in contention, and Chennai today. That's a 4-game fixture list. You look at Chennai's on the other hand, it's not all doom and gloom for them. They're on 6 points. They could get to a maximum of 16. They've got more games as well. So whether they manage to win all of those, we'll find out. But that's the run-in to the playoffs for MS Dhoni's side now. Bangalore tonight, then Delhi, couple of games of the Wankhede against Mumbai and Gujarat, and finish off against the Rajasthan Royals team at the CCI. Right, now we will spend about 4 minutes on Virat Kohli, shall we? Because we can't possibly. Dan, come on, get excited.
Come on.
You know?
There's nothing left to say.
Oh, there is. There is. There's plenty.
Speak to Bish then.
I'll come. Bish has got 2 out of the 4 minutes. And here, look at this, Bish. How refreshing is this? The other guest wants you to speak more, unlike commentary. Yeah.
Listen, the one thing I'd say, if we're Kohli-centric tonight, is that there's no great pace, high pace in this CSK bowling lineup. Now there's good spin and there's decent control of seam, but there isn't a high pace. So I think that's one thing that I'd like to edge in his favor. And if he comes out with a clear mind, and he's a great player, I cannot tell him about mindset, but if his mind is clear and he plays on merit, he doesn't have to be over-attacking, just plays what he sees and responds instinctively, I think there's a chance. So I want to stick on the positive side and say, I could visualize him getting some runs tonight. That means he'll get naught because I say something positive.
No, that's a great end to it. But no, I think there is a point here to discuss, which is Fab du Plessis gave him the full vote of confidence in spite of the wrong side of the result in the last game. He said, in the larger scheme of things, I want Kohli to be getting 58. If he gets it to 53, that's fine. There's a much bigger sort of plan here that Kohli's now among runs. Now, how true do you think that is actually, and how much of that is just making sure that Kohli, is well defended.
I think it's very true. I think Faf du Plessis understands that to get Kohli back to his best, he probably had to go through that innings the other night, and it's not exactly what the team required, but it's exactly what Virat Kohli required, and that's what Faf is saying. So look, I have no doubt that we're going to see the best of Virat very soon. He's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. So the constant talk is around seeing him at his best, and I think everyone's desperate to see it, because when he is at his best, it's people stop and watch. But I think tonight will be surface dependent, and whether there's a surface like the last game, and that'll allow him to be at his best. If it's the game, I think where Rajasthan defended 144. If it's like that, then it's going to make it tricky to see him at his best.
Okay, well, they're batting first. Saw how well Ruturaj Gaikwad and Devon Conway struck it the other day, batting first against an informed Sunrisers attack up against Virat Kohli. Like Ian Bishop points out, no real threat of big pace like there was Lockie Ferguson in the last game, who did keep him quiet in the process of getting that near run ball half century. Let's just look at Mukesh Chaudhary's season though very quickly before we wrap things up. Here's a bowler now who seems to have cemented his place in the CSK 11. He had a tough couple of games. Liam Livingston took him down. Quite a few players went after him. Next 4 games, vast improvement. 8 wickets at an average of about 15, economy of 8.5. We also see how he's been used this season. Bish, I know you'll watch these left armers, these Indian uncapped players very closely, even when you're calling the game. And it seems to be good, or rather very good in the power play. Things go slightly south at the death. Now, I know it can get tough at the death, but 15.8, is that even above average? Would you like to see him improve? Are you happy with just the development of Mukesh Chaudhary, the power play bowler?
No, I think there are certain guys who will say, look, I'm happy I'm in the team for a certain role in the power play, but all bowlers I know are looking to perfect their craft. They don't just want to be a power play bowler. They'll take it if they can get it, but he will want to improve his end of innings bowling, his middle of innings bowling, but he's certainly doing a job swinging the ball up front, little changes of pace. And as you said, Yash Bell, Natarajan, all of these guys are contributing. The angle of the left-hander as well, absolutely brilliant for him. He needs to pick up his fielding though. He's dropping far too many catches already this season.
I like it. We have something on that as well. We got the most catches dropped this season. Let's go to that one, shall we? CSK are on top with 19. It's awesome. We're getting these sorts of graphics as well now. We've got Bangalore with 13, so they're in the top 5. It's a top 5 clash on a very miserable list, if you think of it. And if you look at players, we've got that too. Let's go to most catches dropped by players. Yeah, well, Santner's there. There's a lot of yellow in that. There's Jadeja, Santner. Oh, sorry, it's all by CSK. Match 49, forgive me. But 4 drop catches for Mukesh Chaudhary. It's just become a thing now. Would there be a few jokes in training too of these guys?
I think it's just stepped past the joking stage. I think particularly Santner and Jadeja, that's the worry. Those two are normally very reliable. So I think as a young seamer coming into it, sometimes your focus is purely on your bowling, and when your over's over, you actually forget you've got a responsibility in the field. And that's just learnings. Plenty of young seamers have been through this, that they switch off once their overs finish. So it's a case of him just trying to remain in the game as much as he can.
Okay. We've actually carried on for a few balls because one of these two tend to get out. So we have something to discuss. But 4 balls, both Faf du Plessis and Virat Kohli have survived. So let's leave it there. Let's get a prediction though on a score from Dan and Bish. Dan will do this first. Bish will then have something to go with. Otherwise, he's going to throw it back to Dan. So let's ask Dan first up. Score for Kohli and score for RCB.
Oh, God. The wicket from the brief glimpse, looks like the wicket that we saw in the Sunrisers CSK game. So therefore, I think it's going to be 180, 190 will need to be scored. Kohli, 103.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, Bish ended his last point on Kohli saying he'll probably get out or not. So he's got more than that now. Bish, do you share Dan's optimism?
Well, I can't comment on Dan's prediction. Dan is younger and he's been in the thing longer than I am. I'm going to go 48 Kohli and 170 RCB.
Well done. All right. So we're still looking at 170, 180, 190, somewhere there. RCB, would you take that? We'll find out at half-time, see how many they've actually got, see how Kohli's gone at the back of that half-century in the last one against the Titans. Join us then with Ian Bishop and Dan Vettori on Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by IQ 95G. Before I leave you though, let's have a look at the IQ ESPN Cricket Info Biggest Fan Challenge. And this is the comment I need you to fill up now. Just 6 words or less. If I was Dhoni, I would. And if you finish that line, if you're funny enough, if you're smart enough, witty enough, you could get a chance to be on ESPN Cricinfo's live show this week. Just like the post, comment with hashtag IQ, hashtag ESPN Cricinfo, and hashtag biggest fan challenge, and share it on social media. I'm going to give Bish and Dan 20 overs to figure out their version as well of if I was Dhoni, I would, and I will come back then. Giving you time.
No.
Don't say I wasn't unkind. Right. And I shall then pick up the chat at the end of the CSK innings. So we look forward to your company then.